May I request Ms. Julie Owen, President AACE International US, to deliver the keynote speech. Ms. Owen holds the AACE International Certification for Planning and Scheduling Professional, PSP. She is a Certified Cost Professional, CCP. She has over 25 years of experience in the field of project management, project control, cost engineering, scheduling, contract administration, and schedule delay claim analysis. As a Senior Project Controls Manager for Los Angeles County Metropolitan Transportation Agency, she has taken a 30-year-old initiative to improve the county's infrastructure. Madam, please join us on stage.
So thank you for the opportunity to speak before you today. I'm going to be talking about a case study of the implementation of a program management office at Los Angeles Metro. But before I get started, I am the current president of AACE International. I think we have a few AACE members that are in the audience. We did a launch of the AACE South India section in Chennai last night in affiliation with the ENC PMI group, so thank you so much for the cooperation of that. AACE International is a project controls organization that's global, and I'm in the process right now of stopping along the way of visiting different members around the world. So it's nice to be in your beautiful country of India. It's my first time, so thank you very much. So let's see. A little bit about myself really quickly. I'm originally from Houston, Texas. I live in Los Angeles. Got a degree in construction management from Texas A&M University. I am definitely an adventure type person. I love to skydive, scuba dive, and I love really big dogs. A little bit of introduction into LA Metro. So how many of you guys in the audience have been to Los Angeles? Okay, quite a few. How many of you have ridden the Los Angeles subway? A few hands, okay, that's interesting, great. So Los Angeles is the second largest public transportation system in the United States, behind New York City. And we're a very heavily populated area. We've got 18 million people in Los Angeles that we serve with our transportation assets. We have 88 different cities that are in the Los Angeles area. And we have a really large area. I'm not sure how big Chennai is, but Los Angeles, our service area we cover is 1,433 square miles, or 3,700 kilometers. And just a little history for you. We in Los Angeles did have, at one point in time, we did have a transportation system in the 1920s. And that was in use the 20s, 30s, and 40s. And then we had somewhat of a scandal in Los Angeles where the politicians took bribes. I'm not sure if that ever happens here. And they corruption with Standard Oil and Goodyear Tire convinced the legislature of the state of California that they wanted to no longer have transportation systems and that we would only have cars and there would never be a need for anybody to have anything other than a car, right? So what happened was, in the 50s and the 60s, they started ripping out all the rail lines around Los Angeles. And, you know, unfortunately, many people that didn't have the means, the monetary means to have cars, then had a difficult time getting around. So what happened is, in the late 80s, so many years of only cars, in the late 80s, we started putting the system back in, right? So now, 80s, 90s, to where we are right now, we have 6 different lines that are in Los Angeles, 90 kilometers, 80 stations in Los Angeles, but it still has quite a ways to go to be where it was in 1920. So that's a little bit of the bad history in Los Angeles of what happened. So Our agency in Los Angeles, we cover all the transportation assets. So what that means is we manage all the buses, all the light rail, all the subway, all the carpool vehicles, all of the toll roads that are there. We also do disability services. So if somebody's in a wheelchair and they need to go somewhere, they can call us and we take them. So we do all the transportation assets in LA County. And we recently approved a $36 billion capital program to increase our system in Los Angeles. We'll talk more about that in just a moment. And what's important is, when we were building, I mentioned to you we did 6 lines from 1980 until basically a few years ago. We were really good at doing one project at a time. One project, and then the next, and then the next, and the next. And when this initiative passed, all of a sudden we were faced with 12 lines. So I mentioned to you we had 6. This doubles the capacity of what we had. And when you look at what we're doing in Los Angeles right now, we've got $12 billion worth of projects that are in construction right now, which meant that we had to become more innovative in what we were doing. And when this initiative passed, our board of directors asked us whether or not we were equipped, to harness the people power to be able to manage these projects and how we were going to deliver them. So in addition to the 12 transit projects, we have 16 different highway projects in Los Angeles that we're delivering. And these highway projects some of them are brand new highways, some of them are widening the highways, some of them are putting in carpool lanes. The whole basic concept is to increase the flow of traffic in Los Angeles. So of the people that went to Los Angeles, did any of you never get stuck in traffic? Not one, oh, one hand. Okay, I'm impressed. Now in Los Angeles, there's traffic 24/7, and it's getting worse and worse. So that's one of the reasons why we've approved these projects. Interestingly, the governor of California just approved a new ballot initiative, as if $40 billion worth of projects wasn't enough. Now they've approved putting another $120 billion on the ballot for more transportation projects. So I'm actually kind of excited about that because it's a really good time to be in transportation and infrastructure because the U.S. has not necessarily been very good at investing in its infrastructure, and we're trying to catch up. And hopefully one of these days, my children will be able to ride the train everywhere if they want. So it's kind of excited and more sustainable for our environment. So I know I'm talking to a project management group. I'm just going to give you a little history here real quick. When we approved this ballot initiative, our board of directors immediately asked us whether or not we had the people and the process and the tools to be able to deliver a project of this size. And one of the questions that they had was, we were having an issue where our project controls group was looking at project controls. Our whole job is about predicting the future. Looking at the data for the project, what's happening for the cost or the schedule or the risk, and being able to say and predict to the project manager, we have this situation happening that we're going to have to address. And it's interesting hearing some of the other speakers say that, in India, we don't like bad news. Apparently the same is true in the US, because what was happening is its project controls department was telling project managers that we had problems, so we were going to end up over budget or behind schedule. The project managers would say, no, we're going to be fine. Just because it's bad now doesn't mean it's going to end bad. It's going to get better. We're going to be fine. So I'm going to take what you've written in your report here and I'm going to take it out and I'm going to say everything's fine. So what was happening was the message wasn't being given to executive management that these projects were going to run out of money or that they were going to take more time. And all of a sudden we started going back to our board after the fact, after we'd already run out of money, and said, oh, by the way, we need more money. Our board of directors got very angry at that fact because what they said is, when you don't give me the news ahead of time, you don't give me the opportunity to mitigate that cost. I could have, if I knew ahead of time, I could have stopped the line a little bit further and saved the money until I have more money. Most of our initiatives are sales tax based, so we generate money over time, so we can have the opportunity to maybe delay the project by 2 or 3 years, wait till we have more money and then continue. So our board got very angry. So what they did was they made an organizational change and they created an autonomous reporting unit to create a program management office that reported to the CEO. Now, one of the things that's unique about this is you can see the project control function. This is how our organization is functionally organized. We had normally project controls reports to project management. We have people that have for 30 years now reported to project managers. So, cost engineers, schedule engineers, document control, cost control, estimators that are all working as discipline experts for project management. And these are all functions that are normal in the AACE environment, along also with risk experts and claims experts. My organization is very, very heavily involved in AACE, which is one of the reasons why I'm there. So we had that project control function that was very, very steeply, deeply embedded with the project management team and reporting to project management. In addition, one of the new things that happened was that we created this program control group. Well, now what's the program control group? The program control group was trying to develop standards. So instead of doing one project and then the next project and the next project, we wanted to create process and procedures that could be then used on all 12 transportation projects. So that maybe we could deliver and have better results at delivering those projects. Same thing with the highway. We wanted to have standards, we wanted to have process. We wanted to train our project managers so that we could have better results for the delivery of our projects. So that was a brand new function that got added to our organization. Now remember that box visually, because I'm going to come back to it in a moment when I talk about lessons learned and aligning expectations, as these gentlemen were talking about earlier. So, I mentioned that we had cost schedule control estimating folks that were embedded for project management, and their whole job is about proactive, early warning when working on the project management team to deliver that project. So now another thing I wanted to talk about is an innovation. I'm not sure how your projects are delivered here in India, but let me tell you really quickly how we do it in the United States. We have a government organization called the Federal Transportation Administration, and they have got very, very defined requirements related to risk management, risk mitigation, where they require that you do project risk reviews, and you have to identify, via risk registers and all of that, very, very prescriptive risk process. And you go through gate reviews. And what's interesting in looking at these percentages, the FTA looked at 150 projects that had been delivered for them, and they analyzed what did the budget start at, what did the budget end at in each phase, and then also schedule. And they identified prescribed parameters that you must have contingency in your project to cover any potential risk for both cost and schedule. And what's interesting about that is this government organization looks at all of our projects before they agree to give us money. And we try to our best as a local city government, to the extent we can get the federal government to give us money to where we don't have to spend as much of our money, we try and do that as much as possible. So these requirements are extremely important. And one of the things that was interesting, so for instance, preliminary engineering. The Federal Transportation Administration says if I'm looking at a project and it's very early on, there's so much risk of scope in that beginning of that project that I need to have 35% cost contingency. And if for some reason I don't have 35% cost contingency at that phase, it's possible that the federal government will either tell us that we can't have that project, that it's not qualified, there's too much risk, or what they might do is they might say, okay, fine, you're outside of the envelope of what's acceptable, so you need to pay for the area that you're not within that envelope. So they do that in both cost and schedule. That's risk management. Another area of innovation for one of the new things that our PMO did was programmatic risk. We said that it's possible, or a question for you, if you're doing 12 transportation projects in your city, do you believe that it's possible that you're going to experience similar risks on one project versus the next project versus the next project? Right? Or highway projects? It begs to reason that yes, you would, right? Well, one of the things that we thought is, okay, we've been doing project risk management, but we hadn't been looking at the overall picture of the whole program. We're trying to define strategically how could we deliver this program where we could then manage some of these risks. And let me give you a classic example. One thing that happened because our projects were being delivered on a silo basis, we issued 4 mega multi-billion-dollar projects to one contractor in Los Angeles. One contractor in Los Angeles. Nobody said, are they going to have enough manpower to be able to do this? All projects at the same time, right? Are we going to saturate the market in Los Angeles? Is this going to be a problem? Then another thing that happened is, as we figured this out and we started to look at this, we require that our contractors insure themselves for general liability, builder's risk, and things of that nature. It's quite possible if there were, are there earthquakes in Chennai? Okay, we have them in Los Angeles. And one of the issues that we had as we were looking at risk is we thought, oh my goodness, what happens if I'm building these projects and I have a major earthquake and all of a sudden a bridge fails or a tunnel fails, right? And people get hurt. It's possible that my agency, if that contractor who's responsible to insure up to $500 million or whatever the level is, I don't remember exactly the dollar value, but if they have such a major problem where they're at fault, they could go bankrupt. And then my agency could be left holding the bag to finish the projects and then pay for all the injuries for anybody that got injured. So we decided, as we were looking at this strategically, that we needed to insure ourselves, for catastrophic risk in the event of an earthquake. So we went out and we bought insurance. So that's an example of managing programmatic risk. Now this is an area where we want to do more. That's just one example of looking at programmatic risk that we're trying to improve some areas. Another thing that we did unique, how many projects here in India are issued for design build? Anyone? Okay. So in Los Angeles, what we were doing before is all of our projects were design bid build. So let me give you an example. The Red Line project was bid, and they said, oh, we need you to break this up into little pieces. I want every station will be a separate contract. I want all the tunnels to be split in pieces. I want all the systems to be split in pieces. So that the idea was to increase competition. What happened was, all of a sudden there was a delay, and my design wasn't very good, and ended up with all these claims and lawsuits, and everybody pointing at one another, and all these problems. And I kid you not, 20 years after the fact, after the lines open, we're still involved in lawsuits. 20 years later, still lawsuits, right? So what we did now is we take the entire corridor, so this line that's across the street that I noticed when I was eating breakfast, we take the entire corridor, all stations, all systems, the entire thing, and we bid it out to one contractor, design build, so they're responsible for all the design, all the construction, all the testing, up into commissioning, right? And we get one product at the end ourselves back to us. We've done that so that we can mitigate risk. We do pay higher prices because we're putting risk on the contractor to be able to manage design and the conflicts between design and construction, so they increase their prices a little bit. But what's interesting is they really like that, because they say, now I'm the master of my own destiny, and if I manage that risk and manage it well, I have the possibility of making more money, right? So, and then us also, when we have given this all to a contractor, it means we don't have to increase our staff as much as we would if it were all the other contracts that were being managed, because it's the contractor managing and not us. And then further, what we found is that we're not getting as many lawsuits out of it. So this is good. We pay a little bit higher price up front, but we get the other downstream benefit associated. So another thing that's innovative regarding our project in Los Angeles and harnessing the people power is we've got a very collaborative community of dealing with the contractors and the owners. So we have peer reviews where our executives meet with contractor executives, and we talk about terms in our contract. So we say, what do you like in our contract? What things can we do better? What are some areas of risk that if we could remove or change would get you to bid more of our work, right? So when we meet with them and talk about those things, and to the extent possible, we change our contracts where we can so that they're more palatable for our contracting community. Another thing that we do also is we look at, we do peer review. So we pay contractors to come in and give us advice. Before we put a huge mega project on the street, We'll pay contractors. We'll say, I want to bid this entire line along with this maintenance facility and this car wash facility, and I want to put it all together, and here's going to be the real estate I'm going to buy. So there's a laydown area. What do you think? Is there anything else that you would recommend? And they come in and they say, you know what, I wouldn't put the maintenance facility there because that's going to be too congested, that's going to congest the site, so I would take that out, do that separately. They tell us what to do, right? Because we don't know, we're not building it. We have an idea, but it's the contractors, the one with the innovation and the ideas, that we want to harness their people power and give them the opportunity to be more creative for that project, right? That's another area of innovation. So with respect to systems, when we first implemented this system, I'm sure I'm probably running out of time. Okay, I'll try to talk faster. We had a bunch of people doing work with desktop PCs. We didn't have an enterprise system. So what we did was we decided to implement an enterprise system for our scheduling, for our deliverable management, for our cost, and then also for our collaboration dashboards. And then we had internal dashboards and external dashboards. Internal dashboards for project managers to look at issues and risks and collaborate and figure out how to manage those risks. External dashboards to be able to share information. So as we were just talking about earlier with respect to transparency, we in the United States, when we take taxpayers' money, we're accountable to our stakeholders to be able to let them know what's happening on these projects. And when we're not accountable, then we end up getting in trouble because then these voters won't vote for when we need our next project. Right? So we're very, very, very transparent on letting them know what's happening in their area. We engage them through the environmental process so they can tell us what kind of project they want, and then deliver that project. So let me give you an example here. So if you go to www.metro.net, which is our website, and you look at Grow Project and Programs, and then you look at Project Management Information System, you can see on that page, go to the next page, you'll land on this, which will show the portfolio for our transportation program. And notice, we're telling the public what was the original budget, what's the current budget, what's been committed, how much has been spent, how much do we think is going to get spent, right? And then when you click on a project and you drill down into the project, you not only see that, you see what's the scope of the project, what's the map of the project, what's the status of the project right now, what are the progress photos. Then you see even more detailed cost information so they can see how much am I spending on construction, how much am I spending on real estate, how much am I spending on contingency, how am I taking contingency out of contingency and moving it up into other areas. Extremely transparent, right? So that our public knows what we're doing on these projects. Same thing with schedule. You see key phase information, key milestone information, so the public knows when this project's going to be finished, right? So with respect to some of the lessons learned, when we implemented this program, talking about people, process, and tools, right, or harnessing people power, our executives said, we want you to track KPIs. KPIs are extremely important. We said, okay, great. What KPIs? They said, I don't know. Right? So with respect to managing expectations, we said, well, the normal ones that you track are you on schedule, are you on budget, right? But what about some other metrics? I put some of these examples on the screen. What about how much has my budget gone up? What percent? What percent complete am I? How much contingency have I spent? Right? What kind of metrics can I look at that can tell me the performance of this project? Right? Or if I'm training project managers, which we are, what percent of project managers have been trained? Right? With respect to managing expectations, these kind of things weren't identified up front. So here's an example of our performance chart, and notice it's just cost and schedule, and we identify comments. And then the other thing, people say, why are you showing this information? Well, look at this. Of all of these projects, notice I only have one that's in trouble, right? So just one. That's the one the board didn't like when we were telling him after the fact we needed more money. So as an example. Project management training. The other thing our agency had was, we have all these new projects that are happening, but we had no training program. No training program. So we'd go out and we'd hire the best of the best project managers, but they would come to our agency and they would know what they knew in their old firm. They didn't know how to do business within our firm. And I don't know about the Indian government, but I know the United States government, the city government, is extremely complicated to know how to do basic things. How to get an invoice paid, how to get a contract issued, how to get more budget. right? How to hire someone. All these things, weren't necessarily identified. So we created a training program and put all of our project managers through it. In addition to covering those kind of basic policies and procedures of our agency, we also identified, estimating best practices, risk best practices. We covered best practices that these project managers needed to know, and then we certified them so that we would have better results across all of our projects with them. So on to my next to last slide. So one thing about our PMO, and I'm not sure, how many people in the audience have implemented PMOs before? A few, okay. I would love to chat with you guys, because one of the problems that we had in our agency is, okay, we implemented a PMO, but management is constantly wanting, okay, what am I getting for that investment? What am I getting back? What's the return on investment? Some of the things that we had when I mentioned everything was desktop PC before, now that we've got an integrated enterprise environment, instead of having somebody implement hard key information in one system and then turn around and do the next, and turn around and do the next, now we're more integrated to our Oracle accounting system so that we're more efficient, so we save on staff time. Obviously, and this is one that's actually a little bit soft, and I haven't been able to quantify the dollars saved. I'd love to be able to quantify the dollars saved, but it does stand to reason if I'm training project managers now in the process where I wasn't training them before, then theoretically I should be able to get better results on my projects because I'm training people that I didn't have before, right? And then now that we're doing a better job of identifying our risks and developing mitigation strategies, again, per that project list where you're seeing all the projects and then there was only one that was a problem, hopefully we're able to deliver these projects with a better capability of success and harnessing, our people power. And then finally, having that information that's available to the public at their fingertips, that they can see the status of the project whenever they want, 24/7. We update that information on a monthly basis. Then when I have to go back to the public and ask them to vote for more transportation projects, they will be able to know whether or not we've been delivering as we promised we would deliver or not, right? So I have better stakeholder satisfaction, better transparency of information, which we're finding our public expects. They expect that transparency and visibility into these projects. Lessons learned. I told you to remember that slide at the beginning of the function. One of the key lessons learned as we were going through this PMO and the identified functions, we didn't tie the staff that they were giving us to the functions they wanted, right? So executives wanted all these new functions, but when we asked them for positions, they gave us one person to do all of those new functions. And what happened is, instead of being as efficient as we wanted, we had to pick which areas we were going to focus on first. So I mentioned before that we haven't done that much in programmatic risk yet. We haven't been able to establish programmatic risk policy and procedure guidance yet. That's next on our agenda. It's been 5 years now. So it's one thing we want to do. Another thing that I wanted to say too is when we were delivering this whole system, one of the last things that we implemented, and I think quite frankly it should have been one of the first, was that dashboard for our stakeholder transparency. That wasn't there. So it was hard for the executives to know what we were doing and delivering because they didn't see what we were doing. And they need to be told and reminded over and over again of what we're doing so that they will support us. And they'll support us and keep things moving forward. So, I don't know how far I'm over, but thank you. And if there's any questions, I can take some questions. Otherwise, thanks for the opportunity to present to you.
Thanks, Ms. Julie, for explaining the planning and mitigation plan for the 30-year project with a big budget of 35 billion. You have explained many practical situations, the controls to be introduced like insurance for earthquake. Definitely Chennai now will start looking into flood insurance. As a sign of the gratitude, we would like to present a memento to Ms. Julie. May I request Shivakumar, VP Advocacy and Outreach, and the Conference Director to hand over the